Silent scan.
Underground grid connected. Please insert your passkey. Passkey accepted. Downloading payload.
I don't know if this is going to reach anyone, but I must hope. Hope is the only thing that Global Genesis can't take away from us, no matter what disgusting machines they build to try. So here we are, hoping. We are the Underground Grid. We are spreading stories of hope and the word the flock really hates, freedom. This recording is from someone near and dear to my heart. Love you, Lo. Wherever you are, stay safe and don't stop resisting. And that goes double for you, fellow listeners. The future is listening. The truth lives here. The Operators, Part 1.
I was beginning to get nervous. I fidgeted with the fabric of my fingerless gloves before exhaling into my cupped hands. My breath created a cloud of condensation, but it did nothing against my frozen fingers. I was beginning to shiver. But it wasn't from the chilled air or the cold of the metal train car which was beginning to seep past the protection of my jacket where my shoulder met its frame. This was taking too long. I checked my watch. The train was scheduled for departure in 10 minutes. My stomach clenched. It was no secret what would happen if we were caught. Citizens were not allowed in or near the train cars. I scanned the tracks up ahead and behind me, finding no signs of drones or the black uniforms of the flock. Then I banged a fist lightly against the side of the car. It was loud enough for Jennifer to hear me, but not loud enough to draw attention. I waited for a beat. There was no reply. "Jennifer," I whispered loudly. Silence. I cursed under my breath, grabbing hold of the ladder and preparing to hoist myself up. I had just positioned my foot when Jenny's head popped up over the ledge. "Relax, Lo," she said quietly, a mischievous grin tugging at the corner of her lips. "I'm right here." The hat on top of her head was now lopsided, and the strands of her black hair stuck out around her face where they had escaped her braids. I let loose a breath, both in relief and in frustration. I took a step back to look up at her and crossed my arms. She ignored the look, working to lug the large bag she had slung over one shoulder to the top of the ledge. "Too bad we can't take more," she grunted, struggling with the bag's weight. "There's more where that came from." The bag made its way slowly over the edge. My eyes went wide as it dropped, and I made to catch it. The contents jingled lightly as they shifted. I groaned. It was heavy, much heavier than I had expected. This would be a slow and arduous walk back into town. I hoped we didn't run into anything that required a quick exit while in the wilds. This bag was far too heavy and cumbersome to run with. Any altercation would mean abandoning the bag, all the hard work we put into filling it, and the payload that was sure to come. My mind began to wander towards the many rumors of foul beasts, poisonous plants, and even dangerous degenerates. Rumors of things designed by Global Genesis to hunt people who had gone wandering where they didn't belong and weren't authorized to be. We were extremely cautious our first couple times in the wilds, startling at every little noise and taking an exceptionally long time for travel. Jenny had even laughed at me when a bunny had jumped out in front of me, causing me to fall backwards and land in a heap on the forest floor. But now we had grown accustomed to the ways of the woods. Sometimes it even felt peaceful to be out in nature, away from all other responsibilities. Even so, we had always given ourselves plenty of time to get back and never traveled at night. If those creatures were more than rumor, I didn't want to find out. We'd been doing these runs for a little over a year now. Ever since Dad had been transferred to another province for work, things had been tough. Though we had both taken up as much extra work as we could, and Dad sent us what he could when he could, neither of us had been prepared to take on the financial responsibilities that came from unexpectedly losing the income of a parent. But Jenny and I were nothing if we were not resourceful. It had been Jenny's idea to start salvaging. My sister was something of a genius when it came to machines. She just had a way of knowing what made them tick and how to fix them. Though I was a halfway decent mechanic on my better days. Okay, my best days. My skills lay more in finding things. Between the two of us, what began as a hobby quickly turned into a life-saving steady income stream. It was amazing what you could find in the junk lots in town. Most people paid them no mind before the metals were melted down and repurposed in our local foundry. A few well-placed whispers, and I'd quickly acquired a variety of clientele. Eventually, I found a way to bypass the limitations of our own junk lots by pinpointing the stop on the train schedule that preceded the sifting process prior to our own drop. Lucky for us, the stop had been only about a 3-mile hike away. The work was as dangerous as it was thrilling, but Jenny and I had always been careful, setting up rules and processes for ourselves. So far, we had managed to get the job done with little to no hiccups, and I wondered if the nervous tightening in my stomach was an indication our streak was up. I didn't want to think about what consequences that would entail. Jenny still hadn't come down. I looked up, expecting to see her positioning herself on the ladder or searching to make sure the coast was clear. Eyes above could see more than eyes below. But she wasn't doing any of those things. Jenny was inspecting a beaten-up, small and rectangular box with intense interest. When she noticed my gaze, she held it up. Look what I found, Harlowe. I squinted, trying to make out the thing in her hands. It wasn't until she opened it and the many keys became visible below a broken screen that recognition dawned. The thing had to be a dinosaur of a laptop, to put it in the words of the old world. It seemed a fitting description because my guess was it was indeed old world, circa somewhere in the 21st century. The computers of today looked nothing like that relic, with all their holographic screens and their teeny tiny, almost non-existent bodies. I looked around quickly before hauling myself up the ladder, leaving our sack of treasures hidden in the gap between the car and the tracks below. The gap between the gondola's contents and the ledge was about a 4-foot drop. Swinging my boots over the lip, I eased myself inside. My boots crunched as they made contact with the uneven metal mass. My eyes went wide and I sucked in a breath as I took in the contents beneath my boots. Jenny had been right. There was enough salvage on just the top layer of this gondola to feed us for months. I bent, pocketing some small metal parts at my feet before crouching to inspect the machine in Jenny's hand. It was surprisingly in good condition for its age. It was a wonder it hadn't been more banged up in transport. I think it was refurbished, Jenny said, speaking aloud thoughts in my own head. She pressed a button and the cracked screen flickered. I snatched the machine out of her hands and slammed the lid shut. Are you crazy? Don't turn it on. Are you trying to get us caught? I hissed. Jenny's mouth hardened into a line. She held my gaze, all the amusement gone, and she shoved the bridge of her round glasses back up her nose. Relax, Lo, she said, exasperated. I doubt it even connected to the Genesis network. She reached for the laptop, but I held it back, using our height difference against her, but making sure not to lift it high enough for it to be visible over the lip of the car. She gave up, crossing her arms, and glared at me. You don't know that. Leave it, I hissed. It's no good for salvage without a collection buyer, and Fence doesn't move old world tech anymore. Besides, we have too much to carry back as it is. We should bring it. It could prove useful. Besides, I could use something to tinker with that isn't for work. My eyes narrowed and I felt my temper flare. 'Cause you didn't learn your lesson well enough the first time? A flash of hurt flickered in her brown eyes and then was gone. Her face became inscrutable, but the muscle on her jaw feathered. I sighed. I'm sorry. I'm on edge today. I didn't mean that. Yes, you did, she interjected quietly. We don't have time for this, I said in a surprisingly even tone. But I avoided her gaze, pretending to be suddenly very focused on setting the laptop down at my feet. Wouldn't matter if we did. My gaze shot to hers and I crossed my arms. What is that supposed to mean? She just shook her head, averting her gaze. Nothing, let's go, she muttered. I had just placed my hands on the ladder handles when a quiet thud followed by a cry of pain sounded. We both dropped to a full crouch so as not to be seen over the edge of the train. I motioned to Jenny to stay, pointing to my eyes and then pointing upwards to tell her I was going to have a look. As I made to slowly lift myself, Jenny grabbed me by the sleeve. I instinctively dropped back down and gave her a questioning look. She pointed behind me, and I turned to see an apple-sized hole in the side of the gondola wall that was eaten away by rust. I nodded once at her, and we both made to position ourselves so we could see out of it. Each step was slow and careful, so as not to rattle any of the metal beneath our feet. I must have been holding my breath because when I finally settled myself behind the peephole, my quiet exhale eased some of the tightness in my chest. What I saw, though, did not ease my anxiety. A woman was sitting on the ground, several cars up ahead. I knew she was a stowaway as she was ill-dressed for the frigid weather. It was clear she had either fallen or attempted to jump from one of the cars at a staggering height, as bloody and splintered bone protruded from what should have been the shin of her leg. Her hands were shaking, and she looked around as if trying to decide what to do. I sucked in a breath as Jenny positioned herself in front of me. She peered through the hole and then gave me a pleading look over one shoulder. I shook my head. Jenny held my gaze for a moment. I knew what she intended to do right as the distant sound of buzzing reached my ears. She must not have heard it, though, because she was still making for the ladder when I put my hand over her mouth and yanked her backwards before she could escape my reach. She squirmed, but then went still when the buzzing sounded louder. We both froze, hearts pounding. Through the peephole, a puddle of blood could be seen on the ground in the spot where the woman had been, but the woman was nowhere to be seen. Sure enough, there was a drone flying towards it, followed by 2 black uniformed flock. The drone stopped to hover above the puddle, the red light of its scanner going off. It beeped, alerting the flock it had found something. The first knelt to inspect the puddle. "Yep, it's blood all right," the man said, looking over his shoulder. His partner sighed and cursed. "Do we need to call it in?" the woman asked, the gold iris of her flock eyes swiveling to scan the tree line. The man leaned forward, peering at the ground. He paused a moment before he spoke. "Nah, they won't get far." He looked up at the golden sky before meeting the woman's gaze. "They won't risk going into town, and I heard the temperature is supposed to drop tonight. Let the wilds take care of them. If the beasts don't get them, nature can take its course. Besides, the races are on tonight, and I've got a lot of money riding on a certain racer." The flock woman nodded and smirked before turning to go back the way they came. The man rose and made to follow her. We waited for the drone to do the same, but it didn't. It stayed in place, hovering as if it wasn't convinced. I felt my breath becoming shallow as the drone began to creep in our direction. Had it discovered our bag? Could it see us? Jenny and I remained frozen as the drone hovered past one car, then another, a third, the red light of its scanner sweeping. Jenny was shaking, or maybe I was shaking. I could feel sweat begin to trickle down the nape of my neck, my back, as the drone hovered closer. The ever-present buzzing growing steadily louder with its approach. With my free hand, I pulled the knife I kept in my boot and gripped the hilt tightly in my hand. When my gaze shifted back to the peephole, I froze again. The drone was gone. I could hear it, but I couldn't see it. I strained my neck, doing my best to look through the hole and catch sight of it without being seen. "Drone!" I started at the man's rough shout. "Let's go!" I shuddered when the body of the drone suddenly took up the entire peephole as it rose, red scanner sweeping the tree line, before turning to follow after the 2 flock. I waited until they were all out of sight to speak. "Are you okay?" I whispered in Jenny's ear. Her olive skin was 3 shades paler, but she nodded slowly, letting loose a shaky breath. I patted her on the shoulder, urging her into motion. "Let's go, before that thing comes back."
This is Angela Lamantia. We hope you've enjoyed this production of The Operators Part 1 by Blake C. Holloway, with the operator intro by Angela Lamantia. This program was produced by B. Holla Entertainment, directed and edited by Angela Lamantia, story narrator Blake C. Holloway, operator narrator Angela Lamantia. Text copyright 2025 by Blake C. Holloway, production copyright 2025 by B. Holla Entertainment, all rights reserved. This is a copyrighted work. Unauthorized copying or distribution is a crime. We'll see you next week.
Transmission terminated.